For those of you who don't know me, my name is George Hargis, and I am the social media and PR manager for USPA. And if you've ever picked up a parachutist or spent time on social media, you have probably run across Trunk's photography. He has spent the last 18 years traveling from boogie to boogie, capturing skydivers' smiles in freefall. When he is not shooting events, camps, or records, Trunk owns and operates Hypoxic, a manufacturer of camera gear for human flight. Beyond the lens, Trunk is a wealth of information on camera flying and is always willing to lend a hand. Welcome, Trunk.
Hey, what's happening?
Hi. So I think it would be good if we started out, if you're okay with kind of showing your current camera setup. I know we're going to be running a poll here shortly to see who out there in the audience is actually currently flying a camera, but why don't we start off with you kind of showing us what you're currently using and just kind of talk about the different components. That way throughout the talk, when we reference those components, people will know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, I have my helmet right here. This is my like kind of really big weight helmet. It's kind of massive. It's definitely something that I don't want to jump like doing tandems all the time, but it is something that like if I'm shooting a world record or whatnot, it's a setup that I would be using. Um, but just because it's weight, like the still camera itself, I think weighs like 4 or 5 pounds, and a lot of it is this lens itself. So obviously when we're flying cameras, we want to minimize our weight. Um, but anyways, I'll go through the setup really quick. What I got here is my primary camera, and this is a camera that I'll use for like debriefing. So it'll be like kind of a lower resolution for just getting the shot, being able to give it to the the load organizers or the people running the event quickly, and they could debrief on it. I have my backup camera um, right here, which is actually shooting 4K, and the highest quality of anything. And then if anything happens to my primary camera, I have a backup camera, and we can still get the shot. This is more kind of like my Instagram, TikTok camera for all those, TikTokers and Facebookers and whatnot, just to shoot the vertical video because it is going to, you know, the industry seems to be going that way, so I might as well collect it. And then I got my still camera. This is a Sony A7R4. It's a very 61 megapixel camera, way over the top for most everything, but it's again when you're shooting something big, it's a you kind of go for the best there. It basically is the thing that weighs the most on this helmet. A lot of people have ring sights. Okay, so this is a ring sight, and what this does is this is squared up with I squared up with my cameras, and no matter which way my helmet sits in the which no matter which way my head sits in the helmet, it always points to the same spot. It's actually based upon like World War II, like bombardier type of technology. But it's that's what's the nice thing about it is like every time I put my helmet on, it's kind of sits a little bit differently, and this will always pinpoint what it is. So I know at least what the center is, and then I would have to do other things to know how far forward and backwards I would need to do. And then here is my cutaway handle for this helmet. In case I do get an entanglement, it's something I can pull really quickly. It pops this rivet out, and I can push it off my head really quickly. Likewise, with the ring sights are held on by nylon screws. So if I was ever to have entanglement on this ring sight system, it's also something that I can just physically pop off my head. This is a Tomfly helmet, but Cookie makes a good solution too. Bonehead makes a good solution. There's a lot of good people out there that make really good solutions for camera helmets. Um, the other thing I do use a lot, and this is actually one of my things, I don't want this to be like a an ad or anything, but I do have indicator systems basically that tell me that my camera is, in standby, and then when it's recording, it's right. I'm not sure if you can see that right now, but it shows me that the camera is recording, and I have a basically feedback that I'm going to get the shot. The other thing that camera flyers use is we use bite tongue switches or blow switches. And this is what I use to fire the still camera. So it's connected to the side of the camera, and it's basically how I use it to fire the camera, fire the image. And, you know, and basically that is more or less my camera helmet setup for shooting big waves. There's other options out there that we could go through other things like something for shooting like four ways. There's a system like this where it's just two dual GoPros. It's on a Cookie G35, and this has a cutaway system on it, which is really nice. I think this top plate's made by a company called Skydiving Parts, but there's a lot of people that make other versions of that out there on the market. And the nice thing about the G35 and other helmets like this is you just pull it and you can actually cut it away the system and use this in the tunnel uh, without that camera on there or whatnot. So, um, and then this is a fuel that custom plate. This is my next camera helmet I'm building right now. So that just gives you like a little feedback of what's out there, what I'm using. Obviously, like this is the old flat top pro that a lot of us used when we first started skydiving, or maybe
Mhm.
20 years ago. And you see a lot of these out there. They're just a little bit bigger, or bigger cameras that we used to use. But nowadays, our cameras are smaller, so we've started using a lot of smaller equipment and camera helmets. So that's that's kind of like yeah, a little overview of my camera helmet.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool to see. I think like the progression you were kind of mentioned, like back in the day, the bigger cameras and stuff. And I'm sure the camera flyers from back then are just like, holy cow, he's got three cameras recording and the still camera, and it's all in one helmet, and it's not like mega huge. So I think it's really neat how technology has come, and also your technology showing that it's recording. I think has that's huge for me, especially like instead of being like, "Am I recording?" Like standby off on. We
Yeah.
have like all these hand signals, and it's like, oh, there's just a light.
I created a lot of that stuff just because I screwed up a bunch. Everything I've done in this for hypoxic is because I've messed up, and so it's all ways of making myself not screw up and getting the shot. Uh, it was pretty amazing when I first came out with actually all these indicators, but the Bluetooth, how much my anxiety went down. I was like, oh wow, like just that little like being anxious about it. It definitely helps out having that little peace of mind. But
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's super helpful. I mean, side note, I had a tandem that I was shooting one time, and I couldn't remember if I turned on my GoPro or not. It was like one of those quick exits, like get out, get out, get out. And so like in free fall, I'm like going to the TI, like am I recording? So it's like just having that like in free fall is probably just such a like breath. I don't shoot video anymore, but I can imagine it just being like way less stressful. Okay, so let's jump into it. And again, for those of you that are here, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat and we'll get to them when we can. But I'm just gonna kind of kick it off with there are plenty of opportunities in the sport of skydiving to fly outside video. You're talking about your tandems, teams who are competing, records, other big events like Trunk Munch and Boogies. And all of these things utilize talented camera flyers to capture the action. And Trunk, obviously, there's a way to get into those things. So, how does someone start working their way with the goal of becoming a camera flyer?
Well, I mean, anything in the sport, you really want to start slow. Not start. First of all, you want to start if you can, and you have the license number to do so. Um, Same thing goes with like competition skydiving. You just want to start, but you want to start slow. You don't want to go in and start with this huge camera setup and like have a ringside still camera on your first video jump. It's not safe. You're not going to get anything good. You're not going to, it's just dumb. Okay, there's a lot of there's a lot that goes on when you're adding cameras to it, and not just the entanglement issue that everybody always thinks, but and we'll go over through those issues, but we really want to start slow and start small. So I really, with all these POV cameras, start off with one of those, start shooting outside video for four-way or belly stuff, even a two-way, and just get used to like flying the video, trying to get the shot, trying to get their faces or whatnot. Really focus on something on the skydive. This is the shot I want to get. This is the exit shot I want to get. This is the shot I want to get in free fall, all that kind of stuff. Um, with that being said, we really want you to be not a phenomenal, but a pretty good, like you should be able to fly in your belly pretty well before you're trying to film belly stuff. You should be able to fly, um, you should be able to free fly really well before you're trying to capture free fly stuff. Like trying to learn how to free fly while trying to film free fly is just it's a recipe for disaster. It's you're not going to learn correctly. You're not going to be able to take docks down the road. You're going to be flying with your head out like this and like completely the wrong way on free flying. So you really want to become a decent flyer before you try to film it. Um, I didn't. You see, like this is stuff like I did the wrong way. So I threw a camera on my head and like tried to film free flying before I knew how to free fly, and it's cost me, $20,000, even more of tunnel time trying to learn all this really awful habits. And I still go back to them now, and it's like it's one of those things that you can't. It's really difficult to unlearn them. And it's very expensive. So take the time to become a really good flyer. All the really best like camera flyers out there are like the best basic flyers in the world, or some of them are, uh, especially when it goes to like the higher disciplines, like some of VFS stuff. And you really need to be able to fly well and have the awareness around you to fly camera correctly. Um, with that being said, having a focus is huge. Like if you can join a team and even if you're just learning four way, like becoming the four-way videographer is gonna make your skills really uh, bringing up your skills really quickly. And it's awesome in the sport for anything just to have a focus, be it teams, be it whatnot. I want to be the videographer for this event. And then you talk to like the DZO and like, work towards that. Having a focus in the sport is huge. And then, you could cater your tunnel time and your coaching to that. Getting coaching is a huge thing too. Both free fall, tunnel and unpaid stuff, like show people videos like, hey, this is my video of this jump, like can you critique me, and like being able to take that feedback and not get defensive about it and really learn from it. And a lot of us are willing to help. You just gotta kind of ask for that help. um, don't be in too much of a rush. Like skydiving is a journey. It's not like if I can only be here, then I'll be set. It's like you're always gonna be struggling for that goal. So like remember, this is a journey and have fun while you're doing it. Don't be in a super rush to be like at this spot that you think happiness is gonna happen at. It's enjoy the journey in the sport. It's all good stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Like really good feedback. And I agree with like the whole asking for coaching or just like feedback from people that are better than you. And that's something that I'm still learning how to do now, is just like just go ask someone, like, watch my video, give me some tips, like how can I improve? Super easy to do. A lot of people don't do it though.
It's
Um
amazing. It's amazing how much you learn. I'm still learning. Like there's so much stuff I learned in this past 6 months. It's insane. And like, just stuff I'm like, I should have known this. And people are like, hey, Trunk, why don't you do this way? I'm like, oh wow, how did I not know that? So it's continuously learning, even though I've been skydiving for 21 years now.
I mean, that's why we all love it so much, it just doesn't get boring because there's always something to improve on. Okay, so uh, after you talked about your camera setup, we all kind of know adding different cameras, the fly sight, adding anything additional to your helmet puts you at a higher risk for an entanglement during a skydive. What are some things that you recommend that people do in order to help prevent entanglements?
Okay. It's a good question. First things first, everything you try to add in the sport tries to kill you. Okay, everything you add in the sport tries to kill you. Like it could be the smallest thing in the world, but you know, don't add more than one thing at a time. Like start small, okay? Because it has its distraction value and it has its entanglement value, or a lot of things will. Um, at the end of the day, our neck is even an entanglement issue. Okay, our sunglasses are an entanglement issue. But prevention is the key. That's like really what we want to do is before it even becomes an entanglement issue, is to prevent it. Um, and I guess I could go through some ways that we prevent it. Um, Number one, that I've seen some very talented, very well-known skydivers that still look at their pilot chute before they throw them out. It's a very big no-no. If you're wearing cameras or have outside video and you see yourself doing that, stop doing that. Okay, it's like where people will almost kind of bring their parachute up to their face before they pitch it. I think it's an old habit. Somewhere along the line, people learn that, and just definitely don't do that. Um, Another thing that we do for prevention is our as our campies as we're getting higher performance campies, we're starting to get more and more excess brake lines from the eyelet to your toggle. That stuff needs to be basically stowed properly. We don't want that flapping all around and being able to grab one of our cameras. So we definitely want to make sure that we stow that properly. And then when we fire our toggles, once we're open and do all of our whatever you're doing, your housekeeping, before we fire our toggles, we're going to take a look at them, take a breath, make sure everything's cool before we actually fire them. That breath has saved me so many times. And before I made that breath, I had so many cutaways. So definitely, as these cameras are getting have more and more excess, take cautious to that. Uh, your dive loops are even a are entanglement issue for cameras helmets. So be cognitive of your dive loops and your risers, especially when you start jumping with, you know, ring sights. We want to make sure that our ring sights are never something like that out, even when we're not using them, because it has entanglement. A lot of people think entanglements are just about the campy lines. Okay, it's really hard to get a line around your crown of head. Not saying it can't happen, especially with wingsuiters, but because at wingsuiters, your reserves are pretty nasty. Reserve rides are pretty nasty, but um, on a normal, typical deployment, it's really difficult to get a line like right at the crown of your head. Um, but a lot of the entanglements that we see are more from like your risers or your excess, um, and different types. They're entanglements, but they're not what I've when I first started skydiving. I thought, oh, my parachute is going to be like a tangled all around my cameras. It's more about like all this other stuff, like our risers and our lines. Um, Another thing that we want to keep an eye on is like a lot of removable sliders nowadays. The little release tab that they have, it loves to catch cameras. So be cognizant of that if you're jumping in with a removable slider. That maybe tuck your head when you're deploying, or if you before you make sure your slider's down before you kind of look up, type of thing. Um, if you're doing canopy formations, make sure you have the conversation about RSLs and MARDs, uh, and what's going to happen if you have entanglements, especially if it's a high, because it's different between a high performance and crew type of formations. So having those concepts and knowing what to do in case of entanglements are is a good idea. Definitely. Obviously, we another thing I'd like to talk about too is our yokes on our rigs nowadays are really cut in. So check this out. Let me see if I can't show you guys this. So you see how tight in my yoke is right here? If I put on a helmet, right? You see how like close that is to the sides of it? That's really why we don't no longer want to use any type of side mounted camera helmets. It's a really big no-no with all these rigs. And we really want to make sure that we take care of anything off to the sides, because our yokes are so tied in now that your risers are going right next to your helmet, especially as our helmets are getting a little bit wider. Like the G4 and stuff like that is a little bit wider because of the protection. So we don't want to have anything on the sides. Um, so the other thing is with the MARD system, like skyhooks and all, when we cut away, a lot of times, let's say we're on a spinning line twist, when we cut away, a lot of times that MARD will be extracting our reserve out from the side of us. We want to make sure that we don't have anything on the back of our heads, because what ends up happening is you're getting shot out. Your reserve basically will go right across the back of your helmet. So if you do are jumping a MARD, I suggest definitely tucking your chin if you cut away, because it definitely do not be watching your reserve. Same thing goes with people like wingsuiters or anything like that. Be very careful of anything that you have on the back of your helmet. If you're wearing something on the back of your helmet, make sure you have your MARD disconnected, because it has a high tendency to take your MARD, or at least put your um, your reserve and line twist. Um, Wing seaters, like you guys have some of the worst openings for reserves I've seen. So just be really careful. Maybe Mars are not the solution for you guys, or whatnot. Like it's uh, it's pretty nasty. I'm not a wingsuiter. I'm not a wingsuit videographer, but I just know just be careful about having cameras all over the place with wingsuiters because it is the chance of entanglements. And honestly, like entanglement scares the living crap out of me. And the reason why is not that I can't clear it or cut it away with my camera helmet and cut away with it. It's the fact that like I'm not sure if I'll survive. I don't know if it's going to break my neck or not. Okay, so we really want to prevent this. If a reserve is deploying with an entangled in my neck, like I'm afraid that I might break my neck from it. So again, like just really prevention is the key here. Um, a lot of people will test their setups with like a line and make sure that if a line was to kind of run across the top of it, that there's nowhere for the line to catch onto. And there's some really nifty stuff out there. There's thermoplastics that you can buy and mold and put onto your helmet. I think I have some over here. If you want to prevent some lines. So like there's like stuff like this, which is a thermoplastic that's just these little beads. And you're able to like kind of prevent these little spots that can catch a line. Uh, Hook knives are never a bad idea. If you have a hook knife, what's better than one hook knife? Two hook knives, because everyone says you're going to drop your first one. I've seen people put some slinks on them so they could catch them really quick and open them up, grab onto them really quick, or maybe a little extender. And practice grabbing your hook knife under a canopy. Okay, make sure because everything changes under canopy. Make sure you know where that is going to be. Um, Practice your helmet cutaway sequence. If you do have a cutaway, which every helmet should have, if you're flying cameras. Um, Practicing the plane. Make sure you are spraying it down with the silicone spray or whatnot every 6 months every time you do it with your helmet. Pay pay close attention to when you're doing it because take some videos because they're kind of a pain in the butt to put back in, but definitely practice it and get used to it. So there's some things I realized I made a little bit of cheat sheet here that that I wanted to follow, especially when it deals with camera helmets because they have the tendency of catching lines and whatnot. If you ever have a entanglement with a line, a lot of people will like try to pull on that line and try to like kind of release it with tension. Remember, like you can always grab that line and release the tension. So let's say if I have something under tension here, grab that line, pull down on it, and release that tension. Like pulling down on it with just your helmet is not going to help. Use your hands, get rid of it, and release that tension. Because things that are tension are like just stressing it more is not going to help out. Use something else. If you have a let's say control line and it's entangled and your campy is diving, spend time and level that campy out first. Please level that campy out first. Don't like constantly try to get the line out. Make sure level flight and then peel left if you have to land it. But don't we seen somebody get really injured by that. So if you have entanglement, just level your flight. That's like kind of rule number one there. With that being said, I also like to mention at this point that um, let's say we have entanglements or whatnot. Don't forget you could grab your lines and control your canopy too, especially with your reserve. Like let's say you have a line twist on your reserve, you can reach up and grab your brake lines above the line twist and fly your canopy and get your canopy straightened out. All these type of tricks is things that you may not have thought of, but are going to save somebody's life. Now that I've mentioned them, and like make sure you tell other people about that because they really are helpful. If you're in a diving with a reserve, you could, from line twist or whatnot, is kind of help it out by just grabbing the lines above the line twists. Your reserve risers are really short, and for that reason. So I think that's pretty much what I have about entanglements. Uh, again, we don't want to look at pilot shoot. I'll go over some deployment sequence stuff, which also helps out with entanglements in towards the end, I think. But so.
Okay, awesome. Like I never even considered or thought about cleaning my camera helmet cutaway. I don't know why that never dawned on me, but like, of course, like the other cutaway gets cleaned. Why wouldn't I clean my camera helmet? It's probably gunkier anyways because
Yeah,
it's on
it's
my
kind of
dirty
dirty.
head. Um, okay, awesome. I do think we have a couple questions in the chat. Let me just take some time to look that up. Chris asked if there was a reference to look at for proper videographer exits for tandem or big way. Do you know of any resources out there?
Well, I wrote a blog post about kind of proper timing um for big way exits, like how where we go, because it changes, and a lot of it goes to like who's running the event. Because at the start of the event, we'll exit a little bit differently than we will when we're going for a record, because we want to debrief the people that are jumping out, like how their exit order, that kind of stuff, in any type of traffic. So our exits kind of change as the event goes on or as the record goes on. As far as tandems and whatnot, or even four-way, it's really based upon the team. I don't know if there's a resource out there, maybe something that maybe me, Elliot, and some other people just get together and write it down one weekend. Um, because it's really different depending on the team and their skill set on when you're going to exit. Exiting with airspeed is so much different than exiting with some newer four-way teams. As far as tandems, you really need to talk to the you know every DZ is a little bit differently, and I would talk to your local guys on like what they want to work on, what they want to do. Remember, there's a lot of like kind of what's the word I want to look for? There's a lot of like regulations with filming tandems. I know there's a lot of lax DZs out there, but I think it's you have to have a couple of years of at least 500 jumps or something like that to film tandems or video tips. I don't remember. I should have looked it up beforehand, but there's like some major red tape that you should be following before you film a tandem, and obviously you want to film like some smaller ways and belly flyers first before we film tandems. Um, so that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, I think I just dropped a link to Trunk's website because Trunk mentioned that he writes blog posts. So there is information on there. It's a great resource for all things camera flying. But yeah, maybe we need to rope you and Elliot and a couple of Cherry and get you
Yeah,
guys writing an article for parachutists
Swindle. Yeah.
for camera exits.
Yeah.
um, okay, and let's see. Another question from the chat. What do you call the mount that you have for the GoPro to keep it vertical for like the social media
Oh, okay.
framing footage?
Well, here that's kind of funny that you asked. That is a where is it at? Okay, believe it or not, that is just kind of like a normal like metal mount, right? Sorry, it's a metal mount mounting it, and then all I used is some of that thermoplastic there to kind of create a backstop for it, so it doesn't move back. There are like, and I'll post a link to it because I have a list of all the like. There's so many people that they're making great products out there for 3D printing products that probably have a solution. I think HP Mounts has, depending on your camera helmet. Um, so we'll post a link to that where you could look through all their wares. There's Adrenaline Workshop. There's so many people out there now that are making 3D mounts that are awesome. So they probably have something like that.
Yeah. Okay. The heat molded stuff. I think we'll have to send a link out for that too because I'm like I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Cool.
um, okay, so I'm gonna move on from the questions from the chat for now, but we'll come back to you guys. Okay, so one of the biggest reasons that there's a 200 jump recommendation prior to wearing a camera is because adding a camera adds one additional thing to focus on prior to and during your skydive. What do you suggest to someone who's adding a camera or is currently jumping with a camera that will help keep them focused on the safety aspects of the jump?
Okay. So basically, like what I do is, um, you have to like I said, everything in the sport, everything you add in a sport tries to kill you, right? So over the years, I've found out that you definitely need to get in a routine. You know, especially for all your safety and your gears. One of the things I'll just kind of go through like I think it really hit me when I started adding oxygen. adding oxygen, adding gloves, going to very high altitudes. And people that have been on big waves with me will see me doing this. Like I'll start pretty early, um, and I'll go through and let's just talk about the dive flow really quick. Then I'll review in my head. Okay, so I'm gonna think about like exactly the exit, like the timing of the exit, my flow through the jump, and then I'm gonna think about like anybody that's gonna be crossing paths with me if I'm gonna be converting from like the floater side to the diver side. Like I'm gonna think about what the colors are, who I need to watch out for, any type of flows on that stuff. I'm gonna think about like where the sun's gonna be and what kind of aspects I'm gonna do with that. I'm gonna think about my deployment altitudes. I'm gonna think about what I'm gonna be doing on break off. And then even like housekeeping once I'm open and like how I'm gonna be turning off my cameras and if I added anything to that jump, what I'm gonna have to do once I'm under canopy. Uh, and then obviously if there's a landing direction, remind myself that. So this is all stuff that I'm thinking about like right before I start my process of even gear checks in the plane. So like I said, like flying cameras adds a lot to your flow, and so you have to get into this. Then what I'll do is I'll check my cameras. I'll make sure that my still camera, if I took any ground shots, that I didn't change the modes. Really quickly make sure that I didn't touch anything that I shouldn't have. If I took my cards out, I'll make sure that like my card's still in, like all that kind of stuff. Um, so I'll take a look at my cameras, and then what I'll do is I'll personally do my gear check at this point. One thing I'd like to point out is that I will scoot forward from wherever I'm at, do my gear checks. I'll check my BOC, my bridle, do my reserve, cut away my reserve check. I will personally check my wing lift webs to make sure that my wings are routed correctly, the shackles are correct, and my thumb loops are correct. Okay, so that's my gear, and then chest strap, but I checked that a lot earlier. So that's um, my gear check in the plane. I know some people will check their three rings and their RSL at this point too. At this point, it's very important to say to yourself, hey, I have checked everything off. Okay. So you've mentally done the checks and you kind of put a check mark in your brain. And that really has helped me out to like not second guess things. I've checked my camera helmet and I checked my gear. At this point, I'll put my goggles on, turn my cameras on, turn my cameras on the standby, make sure all my indicators are having the right stuff. And then more or less at like green light, that's when I'll hit record and so basically what I'm trying to get at here is like, you know, you have to get a routine. And like I hope I kind of showed you like how much, you know, once you start doing this stuff more and more, how much stuff you're actually thinking about, and how much complexity it adds to your skydives. Because generally, I'm still in oxygen at this point. I'm opening the door. I'm having to disconnect oxygen, having to kind of get out of the plane. Having to even like give thumbs up on some of these records when we're doing like some of the big waves on the VFS guys to like let the forward plane know that you're seeing fine. So like basically like everything you're adding to the sport, it's a lot of complexity. We're having to, in the same respect, worry about altitude awareness, especially when you're starting to like jump out. Like that's basically your number one concern is is opening up at a correct altitude and not losing altitude awareness. Especially when you're jumping with some younger jumpers or even some older people, which they don't always break off at the right time. So yeah, that's kind of like the getting the routine is huge, and I think it'll save your bump.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, all the things you're visualizing in the plane. I mean, there's articles written about visualization. We know that teams who are competing, they're visualizing the camera flyer. Like you said, you're visualizing your exit. You know who you might be crossing over. You're going through the whole process. So just because you're just like watching on the
Yeah.
outside, it doesn't mean you're not going through the whole dive flow, and that's free practice. You can do that as many times as you want in the plane. So great advice. All right, I'm gonna get back to the chat. All right. What about snag free mounts for cameras mounted on the side or on the chin?
I
I
mean,
guess.
so the sides is no. Just don't do that. You saw my risers, like just stop doing that. That was a bad decision. It will kink your neck. You will get like a lot of like these type of things. You probably may not even notice it. It's not good for you. Just we're done with that. The chin mounts, um, shoot, this is gonna get recorded. So basically, we do not want objects to be jettisoned as skydivers into the ground. Okay. So we want to make sure if we're using a chin mount that it's something that like I really have to distinctly cut it away. It's not something that can accidentally get cut away. Um, so chin mounts are great. I think they're great. But you know, it also adds complexity to it to your to the sport. Make sure you're practicing cutting it away if you need to. I like chin mounts too because you can actually see the light on them. On a lot of them, you know that it's recording. Just make sure it's not a mount that can accidentally get it's magnetized and can actually fall and hurt objects on the ground. We see too much of that in the sport, and I want us to kind of be a little bit kind of better of correct of getting the correct mount so that we don't have objects that may be projectiles. So.
Thanks. And yeah, that kind of answered another question. Someone had asked your opinion about magnetic mounts and whether or not you thought they were safe. And yeah, it's a no. Cool. We don't want to be dropping things on unwilling people down below us.
Or you know, we're at airports. There's aircrafts down there, so.
Oh yeah, you don't want to hurt someone's $1 million airplane. This is a good question. Do you have any like workout tips for your neck
I
to,
mean, look at me. People that know me, it's drinking beers. I don't. What I've learned over the years is a lot of our neck injuries are shoulder injuries or shoulder stuff. So definitely try to loosen your shoulders and stretch your shoulders beforehand. I stretch my neck in the morning. I kind of do stuff like this. I'm not a PT person. I just do kind of what feels good. Uh, but stretching your shoulders and kind of like doing some shoulder exercise definitely help out. Especially since I have shoulder problems too. But I'm not the one to talk to about this kind of stuff. Um,
Stretching is good. Stretching
yeah.
can't hurt. I mean, like we're doing an activity. We should be stretching
So,
everything.
so
Right?
that should be said too. Is like the weight on this helmet. It is a 7.5 pound helmet, but all of it is directly on like straight down the center there. Okay. When you start adding weight to the front or in the back or the sides or something like that, that's when you start having a lot of neck issues. So we really want to, we're designing these weights, camera helmets, and we're putting the weight on. We want to make it towards the middle of the helmet, so the crown, so we kind of protect our neck. So, ooh.
Sorry, I was muted for a second. Okay. I'm going to go back to my questions and then we'll jump back to the chat. So once you've started getting the hang of skydiving with a camera, or like you've used your GoPro, maybe you started using a still camera as well. There's some other tools of the trade that most professional camera flyers use. So you did point out your ring sight. I would I would like to hear maybe some advice on using it. How, like, I mean, if the people who've never used one in this webinar might not necessarily know how it's centered to your camera view. Just kind of quickly talk about that.
Um, yeah, I'll talk about ring sights in a second, but let's talk a little bit about like we really haven't talked about how to mount the cameras on your helmet yet. So maybe that's
Yeah, let's do
so
it. Let's
like
talk about that.
so you want to start jumping, but we want to figure out how to mount them all. Again, we want to start small. There's a lot of manufacturers that make really decent, like almost plug and play setups. Like I know Cookie makes some, Tomfly makes some great solutions, even Bonehead makes some good solutions. And then there's a lot of third market people that make these mounts that some people are alluding to online. And uh, I'll link to like kind of a list that I've created that has most of these manufacturers on there. Um, but like once we create our camera setup, like something small, always we want to start with like one camera. We want to practice it on the ground, right? We want to practice our setup on the ground. We want to know what does a GoPro sound like when I turn it on standby? What does it sound like when I hit record? What does it sound like when I don't have my card in there? That kind of stuff we could practice on the ground, and we should practice on the ground. It really annoys me when people are like fumbling for their switches in the plane. The the yellow light or the green light is not the time to figure out how to turn your camera on and off. We want to practice this stuff on the ground. Um, we want to, if we're wearing gloves, we want to put gloves on and feel what this feels like. Then once we get used to like turning it on and off type of thing, we want to walk around with it. We want to walk around and see what the center is, to figure out what the field of view is. I like to use the apps nowadays that you can connect with your cameras and see uh, basically what the camera is looking at and kind of see, okay, this is what the field of view looks like with my camera helmet on. Kind of you get an idea of like how far, how close you need to be, and then what is center. So that live view option that these cameras have is awesome. If you're flying, if you're just starting out with still cameras, there's like so many things you really need to do. You need to put your still camera on your helmet. You need to walk around. You need to go from a light, dark area like inside the plane to like the bright outdoors, and see how the exposure like changes the cameras. How fast it's taking photos at that point. We want to use our switch, not the switch on the camera, because our bite switch will actually act a little bit differently than our the switch on the camera and how it reacts. And you kind of will start adjusting your settings to get the shot that you need, especially for what you're shooting with. Everything you do on the ground is free, so we want to practice on the ground and get used to it. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that we read the manual. All right, excuse my language. Read the effing manual. We want to for your GoPro, read the manual. For your new still camera, read the manual. You know what else everybody needs to do here? Read the manual for your Vigil. Read the manual for your Cypress. Know what those deployment altitudes are. Everybody needs to read the freaking manuals in the sport, and nobody does that. Okay, um, so read your gear, read manufacturer's manual. Watch your parachutes manufacturers' videos on how do they suggest packing parachutes. Read the manual, guys. It goes with everything in this sport. And we really need to do a better job across the industry of reading the manual, um, especially with the cameras. Like, it's so funny that we're trusting our lives and a lot of these things that we don't take 10 minutes to like read over the manual. So read the manual, if I can't say more. So that's about the cameras and setting up the cameras. As far as the ring sights are concerned, let me take mine off. Give me half a second. Okay. I actually wrote some notes on the ring sights. Obviously, ring sights. I don't know if I can do that on there. So you can see that little dot. Okay, no matter which way I move the ring sight, it's still pointing at me. Okay, that's what's really cool about these concentric ring sights is no matter which way I put the helmet on, it'll center the shot. Now I know what the center is now, but the field of view is going to is something that I have to learn, and that's kind of we base it upon like what we see on their field of view. But no matter what, I know what the center is. When we're installing a ring sight, we want to make sure we include the nylon screws. We use the nylon screws to mount it. Okay. And this plate is how we mount the screws on the helmet. There's two white screws on a lot of the one manufacturer that a lot of people use is the Schumacher ones. And we got a lot of questions about that. There's two white nylon screws and two black nylon screws. They're both nylon screws. They will both break under a little bit of force if we need to get rid of that ring sights. Ring sights love to entangle with your risers. They love to entangle with your dive loops and your risers. So it's something that we definitely want to make sure we're using those nylon screws on. Um, for instance, let's say we're doing a hook turn or something like that, and we look to our right, and I have my ring sight out to the side. It loves to grab that riser there. So we want to make sure that we stow the ring sight up and away before we land. They're eye scoops. We do not want to land with a ring sight in front of our eyes. Okay. These things, I see this all the time, and it really kind of annoys me. It has, and it can, and it has like gone through people's eyes before. So make sure you're articulating it out away from your eyes before you land, because you crash on your face, it has a chance to do that. Like I said earlier, don't have these ring sights out to the sides. Um, Ring sights to me are kind of one of the last things to add to your camera setup. They're very precise and they help out a ton, but they were like one of the last things to add because it does add a lot of complexity and a lot of risk to it. Um, Even a dot on your helmet helps out, like on a visor or on your ring sights. And what that helps you out doing is like not move your head everywhere. You have a point of reference, okay? And it's gonna make your videos a lot more stable by having just a little point on your head. But as you get to the higher echelon of camera flying, the ring sights are definitely invaluable. but they come with a lot of risk. So
I had something to add to that. And now oh, is when you showed us your G35, you had the little
yeah,
cross. Is that just tape that you have on there, or like
yeah,
white
that's
paint?
just gaffer tape right now. Like this is a brand new setup for me. So I just use gaffer tape and it worked really well actually, and I was able to kind of keep it nice and centered and accurate with that. Again, it's something what I did is I taped it. I went to the ground with my live view camera, and I kind of like got used to it. I was watching the people creep and got used to like what my field of view looked like in the helmet. So I kind of followed my own advice and do that when I have my and I got that and put that cross on there. So,
So just reading some of these comments and questions right now in the chat. Someone said ring sights separate the man from the boys, or men from the boys. Um, but it is like you said, I think one of the last things to add.
yeah. I mean, if you look at all the world champions right now for airspeed and kind of stuff, not many of those guys are using ring sights. If you look at most TAM people shooting phenomenal TAM videos, they're not most of them are using ring sights. If you're shooting something really far away, you definitely need a ring sight. But like, to have this like black and white thing like this macho contest, it's dumb. It's a tool. If I don't need to use this, like I'm not going to use it. But it's a tool. So.
Um, one other thing about ring sights, now I can't remember. Oh, someone was talking about the app that you use. So not ring sights, but mounting your cameras. So when
Yeah.
you're saying you're looking at your phone to see where your cameras are pointing, are you just using like GoPro is on your head? You're
Yeah,
using
well, I'm
GoPro app?
using so it'd be the GoPro app and kind of just spotting what the center of it looks like. Likewise, I'll use the Sony's app to sight my Sony. I personally do it so that all cameras are pointing straight and parallel, and then I know that like it's only like 4 inches differential from my eye to the camera on there. There's some people that do parallax where they kind of point everything to like a certain point, let's say like 5 feet away. That's another way of doing it. If you're shooting tandems there, like you're so used to shooting only 4 or 5 feet away, maybe you have to do something like that. But I like to like know that my shot's gonna be 4 inches below, um, my ring sight. So
Cool. All right. Any other? Oh, I guess we haven't really talked about. You mentioned in your gear check that you talk about your wings, attachment points, and your thumb loops. Um, can you tell me just a little bit about using wings? Maybe some recommendations you have for using wings.
again, like wings are awesome, and some bigger people like myself need wings, to kind of stay afloat to these guys. And um, th- again, one thing at a time. Add a camera, jumped at it for a while. Add wings, jumped at it for a while. We definitely want to make sure that our wings. I got my like set of wings. We want to make sure that our wings are not going around our main lift web. That they're out and about. We want to make sure that there's not a gap in between our wing here that we can reach through and grab our pilot chute. So that's a big no-no with our wings that we if we have a wing with the gap that we know that we have to reach around that wing. If you pull your pilot chute through that gap, you're going to have a very, 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 very bad day, especially if you're using a mark. So pay attention to it on the ground, get used to it, get help, get somebody local to show you around and show you how to use them. Um, I'm lucky, like we're lucky, like at Sky Arizona, we're able to kind of jump in the tunnel with our wings and our rigs with in a bag and practice them out. Some people don't have that ability to, but definitely before you jump a wing, make sure that your wing's not covering up your BOC when it's collapsed, or and how to get around it if it does, and how to like kind of reach around and back, and if you do have it over that BOC. Um, when we're pitching with wings, we want to make sure we continue to do a strong pitch. We want to make sure that we're not. I noticed it myself, like day 5 of Lost Prairie or something like that. Like I'll start just doing like these little pitches like that. We had to, and then you start getting really bad openings. So we'll make sure we do really strong pitches. I personally will collapse my wings down to about here, like kind of a mantis position once I pitch, and kind of minimize that, the wings burble. Um,
Yeah, do you want to get into that? I mean, you said you were going to tell us about kind of your deployment methods. Let's talk about what's your what's your method for like trying to
I mean,
prevent
I think
entanglements,
so.
deploying on time.
Pardon? Deployment time.
I was just
So
saying,
we
deploying on time. What are you doing?
okay. So deployment time. Standing Grill had a really good thing about this, and like we want to look at the horizon, okay. And if you start having a horrible openings, tap your toes. We want to be square. We do not want to look up at the canopy. We do not want to watch our openings, especially when we're having a camera helmet. What ends up happening is our necks are at max here. So if we have a hard opening, we are really screwing up our neck. What I personally do is I pitch, and then I have enough skydives now that I kind of know what's going on underneath my canopy without looking at it. But if I start feeling line twists, like you'll know that stuff's not going right. I personally will push my thumbs down so my thumbs aren't up and get broken by the slider. But I personally will push my risers forward, um, and then I'm able to kind of look up if I need to, if there was some kind of malfunction. But we don't want to be touching our risers. We want to be pitching, um, kind of waiting for a bellow. Yeah, obviously grab our risers if we had to steer away from somebody, but we just kind of do not look up at your openings. Definitely do not look up at your reserve opening either, for the Mard reason if you're wearing a Mard. Um, so basically, back to basics. I started noticing really bad openings if I'm watching people track away because I'm looking down at them. So we want to make sure we're looking at the horizon. A lot of times we're opening up higher as camera flyers, so we want to make sure that we're not flying up the line of flight. We want to make sure that if we are having to go back to the drop zone, we could see the next group out away from us, and then then we know kind of what the flow is, because we'll be opening a little bit higher. Once I'm open, we have to get really fast doing housekeeping. What I mean by housekeeping is turning off your cameras, detaching your wings, um, you know, collapsing your slider, moving your slider, all that kind of stuff. If you're not housekeeping quick right now, maybe camera flying is not for you yet. Get used to that housekeeping. Be really fast. Be really also, if you are housekeeping, make sure that you're housekeeping. Look out, look around. Housekeeping, look around. Housekeeping, look around. Because it's really dangerous time. Make sure that you're not turning while you're housekeeping. Make sure you're still going straight out and about, because that gets really dangerous if you're kind of going back into the jump run. Um, the other thing is I like what saved my butt a lot is I take a breath before I fire my toggles. So I literally will take a breath, kind of forget about the jump or whatever, make sure my excess whatever is clear, and then I'll fire my toggles. And that saved my butt so many times. Um, with that being said, respect your hard deck. If you're firing your toggles below your hard deck, there's something wrong. Make sure you're doing that above your hard deck. If you're below your hard deck when you're firing toggles, you need to change something, okay? Because it's a no. All not 90% of my cutaways have been from this kind of that point in my skydiving. So make sure you're firing your toggles above your hard deck. I personally, a lot of people are loosening their chest strap nowadays, which is a good idea for flying your canopies. But I will break my chest strap. What I mean is I kind of will break that tension a little bit so it loosens up, then fire my toggles, then loosen my chest strap. If you cut away or with your chest strap really loose, it's really difficult. It gets really mushy. It's really hard to like peel and punch them out. So definitely kind of be careful about that kind of stuff. Another thing I wanted to mention is it's not a laughing joke. Like, learn how to pack properly. Watch those PD videos that they put together on how to pack properly. It's your life. It's your neck. Like, you can't get rid of bone spurs on your neck, which a lot of camera flyers have. So do not joke. Buy a good canopy. Keep it well maintained. And learn how to pack properly. That slider is key, man. Like, the snaps that the PD now puts on their canopies is really important. So make sure that you're setting your slider properly and taking some time. It's not a laughing matter. Like, I know so many people joke about, oh, I'm a shitty packer, and I know I used to, and so finally people took me aside and really told me how to pack, and now I'm a really huge proponent about it. Um, even line twists under your toggles have twists in them that will, you know, affect your opening. So maintain your gear, get new lines pretty often. So
Awesome. I kind of skipped forward because we were kind of leading into the your deployment sequence, but I just want to jump back because we were talking about some things that you can like essentials for videographers, and I kind of want to just touch on audibles. Um, what are your feelings about
Yeah,
audibles?
you need to. I mean, like one's good, two's better, and know how to set them. Know what they sound like if when they die, or like just kind of get used to setting them properly. And get used to how to use them. You have to have an audible as a camera flyer. There's no ifs or buts about that. So
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, for those of you who in this chat who have not flown video, you can't visually look at your altimeter during the skydive anymore when you're camera flying. So
yeah,
you really need to have a something that you can hear. Okay, I think kind of wrapping it up here. We only have like 4 more minutes left. I wish we had more time. But if someone is trying to get into camera flying and maybe they're just starting off by just filming fun jumpers at their DZ, they're, like, you guys go do the thing and I'll watch and record you and get the shot for social media. Um, what do you suggest for those people that are just kind of doing random jumps? They're not necessarily doing competition or tandems. They're just kind of filming the fun of
well, I mean,
skydiving.
it's still you can still add a lot of input to it, and you're still part of the skydive. So, um, obviously, like, be an active part of the briefing. Don't just show up at like last minute. Hey, I'm going to film you. Like, be an active part of a briefing. If they're doing stuff like, let's say, they're doing inflatables, be the kind of voice of reason for it. Because there's some sketch stuff that can happen at boogies, and I've been the voice of reason a lot. As a camera flyer, like a lot of times I'll be one that's maybe suggesting some higher altitudes or suggesting like a little bit different sequence. Definitely be the voice of reason when you're an active participant to it, especially any jumping any type of things. The other thing I like to do is count the number of jumpers, so I know who all is there. Like if in free fall, like I know like maybe there's somebody lurking behind me or higher, like above me, and I can't deploy in place like I normally do. And then I'll track away because I lost visual sight of somebody, which is really scary. And if that doesn't scare you at skydiving, you're probably not doing something right. Um, Also, let people know your plan. Like talk about like I'm taking center, or what your plan is for them. And the other thing to mention about like when you're just shooting this kind of stuff is talk about like where you're gonna meet for debriefing. Like hey, we're gonna do this jump. Like you're gonna find this video at the end of the day at this point. Um, but like I guess my big takeaway to that is like if you're starting to take videos, is just be an active participant to it. Um, get used to like on the mock-up like kind of mimic the counts and know when you're going to exit and make those decisions of what you're going to do. It's the time is not like on the camera stuff on making those decisions. And obviously with all this being said, talk to your locals. They have tons of advice. And so talk to your locals, man. Like um there's a wealth of information out there. So cool.
Yeah. We only have about 2 more minutes, and we actually have like a ton of questions in the chat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to copy paste the chat, send an email to Trunk, have him kind of give his little responses if he can. And then in the email that goes out to everyone that has the link to the video, it'll have some links to the resources. And then it'll kind of finish up the questions that we didn't have time to cover today. Any last words in our last minute here, Trunk?
No, man, thank you guys. I try to answer your questions. If you have them, definitely on this type of things. Definitely check out gethypoxic.com for all that kind of stuff. There's some like camera flyers. Like I think Elliot Bird is putting together some camera flying courses. I think David Cherry does it. There's some really awesome camera flyers out there that are willing to lend a hand um, as a resource, maybe locally and whatnot. So feel free to ask me questions if you see me around. And thank you guys. This is awesome.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, your website is like a wealth of knowledge. Like, you have so much technical stuff on there, and I love going in and geeking out. And like my first season, jumping with a still camera, I like literally went in and just like set my camera to the same settings that
Oh
you had
yeah.
on your blog because I was like, I don't know cameras. I'm just gonna use what he says, and hey, it worked.
Thanks.
I'm not I'm not a professional photographer, but it worked out for me. So.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And like I said, everybody, you will get an email with the video recording. Thank you for joining us tonight. And if your friends couldn't join, this video is going up on YouTube probably later on this week. Give it a couple days to let me edit it down and make sure that we have all the information you guys need. Okay. Thank you so much, Trunk.
You're
We'll
welcome.
talk to you
Thanks, guys.
later.
It was awesome. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.